What's up, everybody? It's Clark here with a monstrous episode of the BOS Sports Blogcast, the return of the BOS Sports Blogcast. Celebrating after a monstrous Atlanta Hawks victory at home, the Hawks held a moment of silence at State Farm Arena for the tragedies at Brown University, as well as in Sydney, Australia for the weekend, as well as I hope the next half hour talking Hawks basketball and related topics comfort all who have been impacted by these tragedies. So the Hawks are now 15-12 and are a game under 500 at home. They're now 5-6 after beating the 76ers tonight, 120-117. Hawks on the road have been boisterous with a 10-6 record, while at home they're still under 500 but have gone up one game so far. The Hawks are now 15-12. A game under 3 games over 500, as previously mentioned. It was a thrilling game between the Hawks, where they appeared to take command at several points in the game. Paul George with a 35-point game-high vintage performance. He came to play and kept the 76ers in it there till the final seconds. The Hawks, they were too much with Dyson Daniels, as he had another double-double with the Hawks high of 27 points, 10 boards. Onyeka Okongwu, he had a 20-point monstrous double-double with 20 points, 15 rebounds, 2 blocks, and a steal. Jalen Johnson, another triple-double, 12 points, 12 assists, 10 rebounds. Vit Krejci, 19 points on 6 from 9 from the field. The Hawks, they are still in the play-in zone, and it's too early to look at season standings in the NBA so far. But paired with a blowout loss to the Wizards in NBA Cup group stage and a few other big losses, including a blowout to the Pistons just the other night, on Friday night, there's some valid concerns to be had and shared about the Hawks. And we have mixed news so far on the injury front coming in over this weekend, as we have a big enforcement on the way with Trae Young. He was announced to return to Hawks practice this week, and we'll see sometime in the next couple weeks his status turn to questionable or available for a game. They may even give us a target return date, the Hawks, that is. But I think a shift in availability one day randomly and put in a tweet form from a Hawks reporter is how we'll get the news that Trae Young is coming back, as so happens with the Hawks and their injury reporting. So conversely, the Hawks will be without Kristaps Porzingis. They announced today, as the team announced, he'll be shut down for 2 weeks, limited basketball activity as he continues to struggle with an illness that is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome that he's been dealing with since he was with the Celtics last season and was diagnosed with that. Some speculate it might be from COVID, symptoms from COVID, as that is a common symptom of people who've had that illness, common syndrome. So for the Hawks, over these coming weeks, not having Kristaps Porzingis, they're a little bit thin at center. We saw some Asa Newell center minutes. People told me last November when I proposed it while I was at UGA, it was not going to happen, and it was not a good thing to do. He's a power forward, and he never plays center. And tonight, he's certainly a little bit thin in the center line. He's certainly not NBA center every day yet, at least in this trajectory of his career. Maybe he fills out more in his frame, and he can play more center minutes going on. But it's certainly a situation due more so to injury rather than ideally, as we'd like to have him there at the power forward position. And coming in these upcoming weeks, we have games versus the Heat, Bam Adebayo, as well as Victor Wembanyama and the Spurs in this 2-week Kristaps Porzingis absence. We wonder if Wemby will be on minutes restrictions when we see the Spurs. We'll talk about the Spurs NBA Cup later on this episode. But back to the Hawks as well. They're facing the Thunder on the 29th, and of course Isaiah Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren, not good to be not good to be thin at the center position when facing those two teams, as the Hawks will likely be. Of course, that's after the 2-week mark date-wise, but he's probably going to need a ramp-up period. Is Kristaps Porzingis after this limited basketball activity? So he's probably going to be out for a little while at least. So back to the 76ers Hawks game as well, not to dismiss. The Hawks also have December 27th versus the New York Knicks at State Farm Arena. Karl Anthony Towns, another stalwart center there. Hawks will have to face without KP. So Hawks, 76ers. Hot start for both teams. 10-11 was the score after just a couple of minutes. Paul George, he hit 2 of his 3-pointers. He had, I believe, 7 for the game. 35 points. I have to double check that in a minute. He hit one of those threes there in the first couple minutes, along with VJ Edgecombe, to give the 76ers those 3 minutes. Both teams, they then locked down there early in the first quarter. Another score for a couple minutes is the 7:50 mark. Jalen Johnson, he went to the free throw line. He's shooting a stellar 81% from the line this season. He knocked them both down, giving the Hawks the 13-11 lead. Not quite in the hundreds yet. Over the 76ers. Dyson Daniels, he had a nice tip-in layup, the 6:59 mark. 17-11 Hawks. He and Nickeil Alexander-Walker have 5 points combined to that point. Dyson, of course, with the Hawks game high at the end. Onyeka Okongwu, he had a nice opening sequence versus Joel Embiid. 3 rebounds, 3 points, controlling the paint. Embiid still seems to be ramping up his physicality. We've certainly seen him play with more physicality in the past. He's just returning to the court now, so I think we'll see that more in the second half. Certainly the playoffs if the 76ers get there. So just under 6 minutes, Jalen Johnson, he hits the jumper, put the Hawks up 22-16. Mini run by 76ers as they had several times with starters off the floor for the Hawks. Nearly tied the game at 20-22 with a couple missed shots and a couple of turnovers. Even after a few nice defensive sequences by the Hawks there with a couple of bench pieces, Jalen Johnson, Dyson still on the floor. The Hawks are struggling a little bit at that point. Luke Kennard, he subbed in for Zachary Richey at the 5-minute, 11-second mark. Jalen Johnson had another bucket shortly after, put him up 24-20. 6 bucket on 2 for 6 shooting so far, as offense with Jalen Johnson heavy there at first quarter as it should be. And next play, Jalen Johnson gets one of his assists on a dish to Dyson Daniels for the dunk, 26-20. Dyson 7-point. Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson out at the 3-minute, 1-second mark. We now have a full bench, mostly a bench lineup. Pete Krejci, 30-23 Hawks. They're around the 2-minute, 30-second mark. As Quentin Grimes responds on the other end, 30-26 Hawks. At 2 minutes left, Pete Krejci, he had a nice first quarter. With 11 points early. He hits another 3 with just over 1 minute, 30 seconds left. His 11th point of that quarter. And just seconds earlier on Onyeka Okongwu's assist as well. He had a field goal. Paul George, he gets an and one after hitting a 3. And he hits the other. Shortly into the second quarter. As Pete Krejci, he was perfect from the free throw. He was perfect from the field. In the first quarter, as the Hawks had the 39-29 large lead after the first quarter. 76ers, they hit 2 threes to begin the second quarter opening, and Zachary Richey, he answered with a bucket, 41-45. Hawks lead is shrunk. Paul George, he gets the aforementioned and 1 and 3-pointer on his way to 35 points over Keaton Wallace. Keaton Wallace there, he played a couple minutes early in that second quarter and really struggled. We saw it's kind of night and day performances versus the Pistons. He played solid defense overall and didn't commit very many turnovers. Of course, he struggled from the field, as you'll do. But here we saw a bad defensive sequence and a turnover by Keaton Wallace. Something that other Hawks fans have been pretty critical of him on this so far this season. I'll talk more about Keaton later on this episode. So, Pete Krejci, Luke Kennard, Onyeka Okongwu, Austin Newell, Keaton Wallace, the lineup there early going the second quarter. Onyeka Okongwu, he got his second block of the game there at the 9-minute, 30-second mark. Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander sub in shortly after for Keaton Wallace. Keaton and Veet, after Veet had his 11-point explosion. Andre Drummond, he got the putback. 41-40 Hawks lead down to 1 around the 8-minute 30-second mark. Turnover next possession. Jalen Johnson, he subs in for Onyeka Okongwu at the 8-minute 30-second mark. And at that point, Asa-Newell, he is playing center. So there's the Asa-Newell center minutes. It is short-lived as Onyeka Okongwu, he subs in later in just a couple minutes after. Luke Kennard, he had a nice 3-point shot go in, 7-minute 45-second mark, 44-42 Hawks get the lead back after BJ Edgecombe gave him the lead 42-41 shortly before. Onyeka Okongwu, he subs in for Alexander Walker after that bucket. So there goes that short-lived Asa-Newell center minutes. Alexander Walker, he had turnover at the 4-minute 17-second mark on a pass to Jalen Johnson. Quentin Grimes, he gets to the free throw line at 4-minute 14-second mark. As the 76ers, they close the gap a little bit and keep it narrow in that second quarter. Hawks, they led 59-55 at halftime. So that 10-point lead blown to 6. The Hawks were able to bubble it back up there to 4 points. Don Barlow, he had 7 first-half points, as Hawks fans remember him fondly from last year. Controversial play there to end the first half, excuse me. Joel Embiid, he had an elbow to Onyeka Okongwu, 38.7-second mark, called for an offensive foul and reviewed for called a flagrant 1 foul. NBA, I swear there's some kind of physicality memo. I don't think we'll ever hear about it, but I think a memo exists. I think they told the teams to be more physical. We saw how the Knicks and Magic played. Franz Wagner, he got absolutely decked there by the Knicks a couple weeks the other week. And what seemed to be a flagrant foul situation, not much was made of that. That seemed to be one of the most physical fouls I can remember seeing in the NBA. So I think there's some kind of physicality memo out there where NBA has told teams to be more physical. And I think results such as Joel Embiid being called for flagrant 1 instead of flagrant 2 in this situation is one of those results. So 59-55 Hawks at halftime. I think the refs are a little bit more forgiving there. Zachary Richey, 9 minutes, 4 points. Solid first half as he'd come live there in that fourth quarter. 6 points for Jalen Johnson. He already had 5 assists. Dyson Daniels, he had 11 points on the way to Hawks game high. Alexander Walker, 7 points. Mo Gay, he played 7 minutes in there. He's really struggling again tonight. Back-to-back tough games for Mo Gay, lining up with Joel Embiid and Jalen Duren there of the Pistons on Friday night. He's really struggled these last couple games. Pete Krejci, 16 first-half points on 5 for 6 shooting from the field. On his way to 19 points for the day. Luke Kennard, he had a 3-pointer, 5 points. Kristaps Porzingis, Trae Young, only players on the roster did not play. Both out with injury illness. And this Paul George, he had 17 points on his way to game high. BJ Edgecombe, a great rookie, had 7 points on 3 for 10 shooting from the field. So early there in that second and third quarter, we had a little bit concerning action as Onyeka Okongwu, he appeared to tweak his wrist on a dunk attempt over Don Barlow. And Don Barlow, he is credited for the block on the play last I looked. And the ball is turned over. And it seemed like he tweaked his wrist. Onyeka Okongwu is holding it, coming up the court, and he turned the ball over as well shortly after on a subsequent play there for the Hawks. But there at the 7-minute, 8-second mark, Onyeka Okongwu, he hit a corner 3-pointer, put the Hawks 76-68 lead over the 76ers, and hopefully OO is okay going forward, of course, with the Hawks already thin at center. and Kristaps Porzingis being out for at least next 2 weeks. So Jalen Johnson, he returned the favor. Monster block on Don Barlow. I'd call it play candidate of the game, but we did not get the highlight shared by NBA or the Hawks. They did share the Dyson Daniels monstrous block. I forgot to mention that. Dyson Daniels, he had a monstrous block there towards the end of the second quarter. They're at 3-minute, 28-second mark. We'll show that highlight later in the game as well. Joel Embiid looked a little bit shaken up. He was not the person being blocked, but he still got shaken up on the play somehow. So we'll look at that here in a little bit as one of the top plays of today. The top play, of today. We'll try to feature one top play every BOS Sports blogcast from the Hawks game every episode. So I'll come here shortly after we finish third and fourth quarter. Onyeka Okongwu, aforementioned, three-pointer. Jalen Johnson block. Should have had a highlight there at the 5-minute, 22nd mark. But Don Barlow, he comes back and gets an and one on Jalen Johnson at the 4-minute, 30-second mark. A bit of wild shot, lucky shot, but impressive play. Don Barlow, he had a solid game. That was his 11th point to that point. He also had 6 rebounds and 2 steals to that point in the third quarter. He missed the free throw, and Andre Drummond, who had a stellar day on offensive glass, he got the ball, tipped it back in, shrinking the Hawks lead 82-77. Dyson Daniels, he answered with a bucket, 84-77. Hawks lead 76ers. Then here comes VJ Edgecombe with a solid day, 3-minute, 52-second mark, shrinking Hawks lead to 4 points, 84-80. As the Hawks and 76ers trade baskets pretty much the second half with quite regularity. Edgecombe, he had 3 free throws again, 3-minute, 4-second mark, 86-83 Hawks. VJ Edgecombe and one after Hawks get a 3. His 21st point, 89-86 Hawks narrow lead. Andre Drummond, he attempted a 3-point shot this game. He's wide open after a Onyeka Okongwu turnover. He let fly. Unfortunately, he did not make it, but on the very next offensive play there for the 76ers, he got a block on Vit Krejci on the perimeter, as well as an offensive rebound. And just highlighting the Hawks just don't quite have that look there in the paint to match up with physical force such as Andre Drummond in the paint. Same with Duran Pistons. Onyeka Okongwu, he does pretty well versus them, but he certainly can't do it all himself. And even with Andre Drummond, he's not moving like he once did, but he's certainly looked a little bit hobbled there in that third quarter. And remained the game, no injury concern as far as where it might have just been some kind of cramping or so. Onyeka Okongwu, he did well, as mentioned, against Joel Embiid. Aforementioned, Embiid still ramping up his physicality, coming back from, I guess, a little bit too much so with that elbow in there in the first half. But anyways, Mo Gay not improved defensively substantially since last season, unfortunately. I'm not sure what the answer is for him. He's, of course, going to have to be a more wiry build guy. Of course, being that 3-point shot and perimeter shot there on offense, we don't want him to lose that, bulking up a bunch to become a defensive answer for the Hawks at the center position. Asa Newell, he hit a 3 with 36 seconds as he had a little bit of offensive outbursts there in the third quarter and fourth quarter. I think Asa Newell, he has very high ceiling, and just reflecting with Don Barlow having a nice game for the 76ers, it might have been the move to part ways with Mo Gay last offseason instead of Don Barlow. I think that take will remain to be seen, as both players in today's NBA can certainly have big games such as Don Barlow did today. So Hawks bench otherwise is still very awkward to this point this season. They'll have to make a change at some point. I get the Keaton Wallace slander that's everywhere. in the Hawks fan forums. But at the end of the day, he usually plays good, in my opinion, on defense. And has a low turnover rate despite today's sequences. And Keaton Wallace was absolutely playable versus the Pistons in rotations. And compare that to Luke Kennard, and it seemed absolutely unplayable in that matchup versus the Pistons. He's just too slow and too short to match up with a player like Duncan Robinson, and too small, of course, with the power forward and center combinations. So there's nowhere really for Luke Kennard to match up in versus the Pistons. So Luke Kennard and Mo Gay, to me, are two pieces I'm looking at the bench, potential areas where the Hawks would like to upgrade. And, of course, moving Keaton Wallace to a third point guard on the depth chart. I think he's a very solid, great third line point guard, and with sometimes having to fill in with second backup point guard if there's an injury. So 3 potential bench pieces the Hawks could use to really bolster this team. The 76ers, they're not nearly as deep as this Pistons team we just saw Friday night. So the Hawks were able to pull out this game with limited minutes by the starters and survive the bench. Of course, Vit Krejci, he provided a ton of shooting off the bench, and his defense has been upticking as well. Kennard's defensive rating has been 112.7 this season, but doesn't quite tell the whole story, as he has quite a lack of speed, and bench scorers from other teams absolutely attack him. Vit Krejci, he's faring a bit better. He was struggling mightily in November with his defense, and of course he's going to be a target as well by bench scorers, but we saw him as well, had a very nice sequence on Paul George in the closing seconds, prevent what would have been a game-winning three-pointer with the score at the time. And he's really improved a lot. So I think within those decisions, of course, with Vit Krejci's brilliant three-point touch, he's going to have to be the shooting option for the Hawks off the bench. And ideally, a 3 and wing player would replace Kennard, a player still with 3-point shooting abilities, but better defensive abilities. I guess when any team want to make that upgrade. So there in the fourth quarter, Onyeka Okongwu, he starts a 3-pointer at the 11-minute, 51-second mark. 9-minute, 53 seconds. Austin Newell, he got the putback score, 99-93 Hawks. In control, his 7-point second rebound. Dyson got his 26-point. An offense outburst tonight by Dyson, who's still trying to find his 3-point shot. Just to touch on that, have to think of Dyson's upburst in 3-pointers last season. Continued to work on it. Of course, as mentioned that he was working on his 3-point shot with Kyle Corbin, the shot lab. Last season, he saw an uptick in the Olympics in 2024. That carried over the season. Things are a little bit different this season. Dyson's been struggling this year. And things have looked a little bit uncomfortable for Dyson at times. And think he might be simply overthinking things a bit. He was looking at his feet, making sure he was beyond the 3-point arc not too long ago in games earlier this season. And from afar, it looks like he needs to let that shot flow and still a little bit attentiveness to it. If he has room to shoot it quicker without rushing his mechanics, that could help. And I've always mentioned that I dream of him being shades of Bruce Brown from that corner 3-point shot, as that would absolutely help Hawks open up things in Quinn Snyder's 5-out, 4-out motion sets. But his hot spots last year were, of course, from the wings, and he might need to refocus on those spots and home back in those spots to get his 3-point shot back to within a comfortable spot there. So 8-minute, 37-second mark, back to Hawks 76ers. Austin Newell, another bucket, 103-96 Hawks. Reza Shea, he had a 3-pointer at the 8-minute, 8-second mark, putting the Hawks up by 10. Their last 10-point lead of the game. Reza Shea's 13th point. He appears to be coming to life. He has some clutch 3-pointers in recent games. People were trying to write him off earlier this season. He just turned 21 earlier this year, and I think we're going to continue to see him rise, especially with these clutch 3-point baskets. So minute, 12-second mark, Paul George, he begins his fourth quarter offense onslaught, and he's 5 for 6 at that point with 29 points. 5 for 6 from three-pointer land, that is. Zachary Richey, a long two-pointer. 111-106, clutch response after Paul George 3. I think we'll continue to see these clutch responses and shots by Zachary Richey. 4:14, Paul George hits another 3. His 7th and 35th point. 111-109. He's 7 for 8 from three-point land at that point. So he had a couple of missed calls down the stretch. There appeared to be a missed out-of-bounds call as well as a missed foul call by Quentin Grimes. 3-minute, 36-second mark. There's an out-of-bounds call that was challenged by the Hawks, and they were awarded successful challenge for that. Alexander Walker, he suffered what appeared to be a bruise on that play, and hopefully he's okay as well going forward. Onyeka Okongwu, he had a three-pointer after the Hawks won the challenge, putting the Hawks up 114-109. HK Edgecombe, he had a steal at 3-minute mark, leading to a wild sequence, resulting in a jump ball at 2-minute 53-second mark, as there's a lot of action in this game there in the final minutes of the stretch. Pete Krejci had a good defensive game so far. To that point, he looked way better than when I saw him versus the Pistons on November 18th in person. While watching him on TV since then, been making nice strides. So this is great shooting as well that has awarded him closing time minutes by Quinn Snyder there versus the 76ers team. And he, of course, awarded them in several ways, including that great defensive sequence on Paul George in the final seconds. Quentin Grimes, he had a three-pointer, the 1-minute, 3-second mark, which gave the 76ers a brief 118-117 lead. And Onyeka Okongwu at the 44-second mark, he missed a lay-in. He should have maybe been a little bit more aggressive going for the dunk on Embiid with him not being the same physically quite yet in his return. And thankfully, Paul George on the other end missed the shot. And the Hawks, they got the lead. Quentin Grimes, he pulled the 76ers. He did not give the 76ers the lead at 103. Correction. Quentin Grimes, he pulled them with one point. The Hawks led 118-117 over the 76ers at that point. And that would be the final score for the 76ers that game, as neither team had a field goal the final minute. Aforementioned Onyeka Okongwu, he had that concerning missed layup in the lane. Paul George, he tried for another 3, but Vit Krejci, he closed him out enough to get Paul George to miss that shot. Nice defensive sequence by Vit Krejci, and then nice closing sequences by the Hawks. Nickeil Alexander Walker, he got the inbound twice, although the Hawks did have to call a timeout in between to make sure the ball is inbounded and not turned over after the first foul. The Hawks, 76ers, that was their first foul in the last 2 minutes when that happened with 2.5 seconds left. They fouled Naw again, 1.5 second mark. 76ers, they had a bit of a gripe as they complained that a backcourt violation occurred that time. I feel like we've seen that sequence occur so many times in the NBA. No one has ever noticed it. But they might be technically correct, and maybe something that should be looked at in the rules. We've seen that similar sequence happen before in the past, where players catching that and running into the backcourt. As Bob Rathbun mentioned in the Hawks broadcast, the rules NBA do state momentum. There's a momentum carrying the player past the half-court line while the ball is being inbounded. Then there's no backcourt violation. I wonder if that's a reviewable play. They did not mention. And of course, the 76ers, they were out of timeouts, so they could not challenge the play at the time. Nickeil Alexander Walker, he hit both free throws, put the Hawks up 120-117, the final score of the game. Before we recap, the Hawks stats here and get to the highlight of the game. Dyson Daniels, monster block. Going to take a quick pause for station identification. This is BOS Sports Blogcast. Zachary Richey, just under 21 and a half minutes. V. Krejci's hot shooting, maybe not. Richey maybe did not quite get the minutes that I'm quite aiming for him to get at this point. I think with Zachary Richey, he just turned 21. His growth plates probably are closing unless the Hawks think that he's going to be growing bigger, at least height-wise. Then the Hawks should be playing him more minutes, at least around the 30-minute mark, to try to get his consistency in his shot, playmaking, ball handling, defense, all those things, up to where we hope his ceiling, closer to where his ceiling could potentially be. So limited minutes tonight. V. Krejci, of course, he had the hot hand and is playing solid defense as well. So he had 15 points, did Zachary Richey, 5 for 9 from the field, 3 for 5 from three-point land, 2 for 2, 2 personal fouls, 2 steals, nice stat line overall, 1 assist, 1 rebound from Richey. Jalen Johnson with the triple-double, 12 points, 12 assists, 10 points, 10 rebounds, 12 points, 12 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, only 2 turnovers, a nice 12 to 2 assist to turnover ratio as Jalen Johnson becomes even more efficient and cutting down on those turnovers. 5 for 17 from the field, 0 for 1 from three-point land. A little bit of a tough shooting day for Jalen Johnson. Onyeka Okongwu, aforementioned monstrous double-double, 20 points, 15 rebounds, 6 for 17 shooting from the field. Struggles there shooting from the paint. We need Onyeka Okongwu to nail down and get his floater game on lockdown, get his hook game on lockdown, maybe get a little bit more aggressive attacking the rim, more dunks instead of layups. He played just under 37 minutes, been battling over the weekend. Great game by Onyeka Okongwu. I think we'll see games. We'll see him definitely with high percentage shot games future as well. From the three-point arc, he attempted 10 shots, made 5 of them, 50%, so it was a nice day from three-point land for Onyeka Okongwu. Aforementioned, he's 6 for 17 overall, so that's only 1 shot made inside the arc. Not ideal for starting center. So Dyson Daniels, he played just under 39 minutes as well. Heavy minutes for Dyson Daniels with his game high, 27 points, 2 blocks, a steal, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. Great play by Dyson Daniels today. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, 34 minutes, 12 points, 3 for 18 shooting from field. Heavy struggles for Nickeil Alexander-Walker today. It didn't matter, the Hawks were. So, and then just over 10.5 minutes for Mo Gay. I believe he had the lowest plus minus on the team. Oh, nope. I was looking at the wrong stat line. He had a -1. Not so bad. I believe it doesn't tell the entire story, as he really struggled there. Only 1 rebound, and that time. That's not good. So V. Krejci, just under 26 minutes, siphoning off a bit of Richey minutes, perhaps. 19 points, 6 for 9 from the field, 4 for 6 from three-point land. Perfect day at the free throw stripe, 3 for 3, I believe, all in the first quarter. Luke Kennard played just under 21 minutes, 5 points, 1 for 2 from the field, 2 for 2, perfect from the line. Only 1 foul, so 0 turnovers. Not terrible, but also not great. Keaton Wallace, he played 3 minutes, and aforementioned, that was a high struggle, those 3 minutes. We usually see him play, at least Friday night, I thought he played fairly solid defense. So Austin Newell, just under 14 minutes. He had a 9-point game, 4 for 6 from the field. We'll probably see more Asa with Kristaps Porzingis out for next 2 weeks. He had 4 rebounds, did Austin Newell. 2 defensive, 2 offensive. So solid day. He also had a 2-to-1 assist ratio, literally having 2 assists and 1 turnover. So in this broadcast will be better in upcoming episodes of putting this at the top. I mentioned the 3 key stats to whether or not team wins a basketball game. That is, of course, field goal percentage, turnover, and rebounding margin. See, Hawks 43.4 and 57. I think that's probably it. They beat. Yep. Hawks win field goal percentage and rebounding battle. The 76ers had a 37.6 field goal percentage and 54 rebounds. 76ers had 15 turnovers as well. The Hawks had 16. So you can't win them all. Paul George, aforementioned, 35 points, 7 for 10 from the field. So he missed his last 2 3-point shots. If he just made one more of those, game could have potentially gone different. VJ Edgecombe, rookie, stellar rookie. He shouldn't. Hopeful for all rookie team and Rising Stars game if they still have that, and NBA All-Star Weekend. 26 points, just under 39 minutes. Absolutely stellar play by a highly talented rookie, VJ Edgecombe. 9 for 21 from the field, so he turned around those shooting struggles from that first half as well in the second. Andre Drummond, he had 10 rebounds, 5 of those offensive. Aforementioned, the Hawks struggling, keeping up with physicality in the paint. So before we get to Spurs Thunder from yesterday, NBA Cup action, before we touch on that a little bit, we got to take a look at the BOS Sports Blogcast play of the game, and that is Dyson Daniels' catch-up block on our man here. And it appears that I forgot to add my microphone to the section, so I think it's going to replay a couple times before my voice joins in. So here we go. Dyson Daniels block and transition. Beautiful. Every time a player has a block and transition, gotta rate it up to the legendary Tyshawn Prince block in the playoffs from the 2000s. This one's about a 4 out of 10. Tyshawn Prince block, more comparable to some LeBron James's catch-up blocks in the 2000s. They're just not the closeout it had. Dyson Daniels played just under 39 minutes this game. Huge part of the Hawks 120-117 win today over the 76ers, and with the highlight of the day, BOS Sports highlight of the day, Dyson Daniels block and transition. We got a Spurs highlight to discuss too, and I think I'm going to have to do that as well with the microphone with a little delay. So Spurs win 111-109 and going to the final game in shocking and thrilling fashion over the Thunder. Yesterday, Victor Wembanyama, absolute dominance in limited minutes, and his return from a calf injury has kept him out since the Spurs' November 14th game versus the Warriors. Wemby played 20 minutes, 39 seconds with 22 points. He had 2 blocks, 9 rebounds, 5 turnovers, 6 for 11 shooting from the field, 1 for 1 on 3-point land with 2 fouls. Devin Vassell, he had a Spurs high of 23 points. Several other Spurs, Stephon Castle and De'Aaron Fox, also had 22. While Vassell had 17 of his 23 points the second half with 9 in the fourth quarter. As well, he was a part of the key controversial play with Alex Caruso, and then the game. We'll absolutely have to visit that here in a minute or so after a little bit of recap. So, Victor Wembanyama, he was returning from a calf injury on immense restriction, something Spurs fans are not new to. With previous names, franchise names such as Tim Duncan and his knee injuries, Kawhi Leonard and his injuries, they were all on minutes restrictions at points of their career. And so is Victor Wembanyama again. So it'll be interesting to see if Wemby's minutes restrictions are any different with NBA Cup on the line. The Spurs have, of course, the fifth most NBA championships in the league, one behind the Bulls, with 6 Michael Jordan chips, and 2 ahead of the Trailers. All have 3 NBA championships due: the Miami Heat, Detroit Pistons, and Philadelphia 76ers. That is if you count that one Syracuse Nationals title in 1955. And if the Spurs were to go on win NBA chip with Victor Wembanyama, this NBA Cup would give them a clear amount, and as well the NBA Cup and NBA Championship with Wemby. This would give them a clear amount of accolades to rank the Spurs higher as a franchise above the Bulls. As well, if you disclude the Philadelphia Warriors championships, still can't believe they didn't win one with Wilt Chamberlain. He had to do it with the Sixers before they moved to Golden State. But if you disclude the Philadelphia Warriors championships, the Spurs having an NBA Cup championship, it would set them apart as a better franchise. I think that's a little bit dubious. Syracuse Nationals, they were a different ranked team, a different named team than the 76ers. So I feel like Warriors moving from Philadelphia to California, keeping the name, I feel like you have to call it the same franchise, includes those championships. But as far as teams go in the 2000s, this millennium, the Spurs and Warriors are tied with 4 championships, I believe. Since the turn of the millennium, an NBA Cup title for the San Antonio Spurs would make them the top team of the 2000s over the Warriors undisputably. So, they got one more to go versus the Knicks. Can they do it? We will see. The Spurs, they were an amazing minus 27 and plus 3 without Victor Wembanyama in the first half up until the 3-minute, 52-second mark to go. When Victor Wembanyama subbed back in, he played just over 7 minutes by halftime and helped the Spurs rally from what was a 16-point deficit at the 3-minute, 52-second mark to just being down a few points at halftime. The Spurs went on a 15-2 run there in the second half, giving a Victor Wembanyama a plus 20, a plus or minus of plus 20 at halftime in just 7 minutes. 19 seconds played, as Dirk Nowitzki said in broadcast. Insane. So, 5 points, a block and a steal, 5 rebounds and assists on 2 for 3 from the field in the first half for Wemby. The stat line does not quite tell the whole story. As Victor Wembanyama, he absolutely shut down the paint, eliminated the Thunder's paint game from all points of the ball. The perimeter defenders for the Spurs were better able to pick up that Thunder team and force them to hit jump shots. Victor Wembanyama forced the Thunder into becoming a jump shot team. Floaters, they're closer to the top of the key than they are to the paint. Of course, with Victor Wembanyama's ridiculous height and wingspan, can't get off that floater very deep in the paint. So, though Luke Kornet did a solid job as backup center, starting center actually today for the Spurs with Wemby on bench restrictions. He had 8 rebounds, good defense on Hartenstein, who had 10 points, 9 rebounds. We sometimes see Hartenstein with larger numbers. So it was a good job overall by Luke Kornet. Hartenstein as well had 3 turnovers and 3 fouls in 20 minutes. The Thunder as a team shot 43.9% and 30% from three-point land with only 8 turnovers. So defense by Victor Wembanyama was quite a big factor. And the Thunder as well, they struggled shooting from field in yesterday's game. One thing I did notice is the Thunder seemed a little bit lackadaisical when Victor Wembanyama was out, especially in that first half. They seemed to think, oh, we got this game just like all their others. I mean, I thought they had the game too. I thought the game was over at halftime, even with the Spurs' late run there. But they should have just put the foot on the pedal more. Obviously, losing by one score. If they just focused a little bit more in that first half, when Wemby was out of the game and scored more, things might have been different yesterday for the Thunder. Jalen Williams was a part of that slow first half, having 4 points and 2 for 9 shooting, although he did have 10 clutch points there in that fourth quarter. The only Thunder player in double figures that first half was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, with Chet having 9 of his 17 points the first half as well. The fourth quarter, Shai and Holmgren only combined for 10 points as well. The Spurs, they clamped down on defense. A little bit disappointing fourth quarter there for two Thunder stars. So, before we sign off in today's episode, we got to look at this we got a little bit of Braves talk as well. It's probably going to talk about Braves for like 2 or 3 minutes here, trying to wrap up. We got to look at this controversial foul call. Call it controversial just because Alex Caruso was yelling about going to the locker room. I think if you looked at the replay, I feel if you're going to crash out about that, it might wait till the post-game interview. If you looked at the foul on replay, I think you'll agree with my take. So here we go. As aforementioned, and we looked at that other clip, I got to pair my mic while it's playing, so I think it's going to play once before we start talking about it. All right. I'm going to have to give it a chance to replay here. Alex Caruso can't believe it's a foul. So we had Victor Wembanyama inbound it to Devin Vassell there. Alex Caruso goes for the steal, slaps Devin Vassell. A little bit marginal contact on the arm. They call it a foul on that play. I absolutely think it was not a foul. The referees have allowed extremely physical play. As I mentioned earlier in this episode, I swear there's a physicality memo where Adam Silver's trying to bring back old school basketball where things were a little bit more physical, a little bit back 2009 nines or so. This is not a foul, especially C versus Magic and Knicks. If this was a foul called at one of those games, Madison Square Gardens, there might be a riot, as NBA has absolutely allowed very physical play in this early season. We've seen some very surprising calls and fouls, including this Atlanta Hawks game, where flagrant foul probably should have been called on Joel Embiid there late in that second quarter. And so, aforementioned, the Thunder, what did them in was not stepping on that gas there in the first half when Victor Wembanyama was out. The Spurs outmaneuvered them, as they have so many times with their franchise names out. Kawhi Leonard, Tim Duncan, they find a way. They're used to their stars being out, and they have game plans way back there in the front office, what to do, and they pulled it off again here versus this Thunder team. So, looking forward for the Thunder, can they win versus Victor Wembanyama when he returns to full minutes? That's a very valid question. And if they can't, the best option, with not very many obvious trade situations being available, might be for the Thunder just to wait for more of their draft capital to kick in. Of course, with all this spoil of luxuries from the Paul George trade kicking in for this Thunder team, if they had Thomas Sorber, and he was healthy, of course, he got injured, out for the year, September. He would be a very interesting name to help the Thunder add a little bit, even more physicality at that center position. As there's only maybe two teams in the NBA between the Nuggets and Spurs where maybe the Pistons too. Durant is a huge force in the paint, as we saw in this Hawks game. Joel Embiid, MVP candidate, perennial All-Star. We saw a potentially larger force at center versus the Detroit Pistons Friday. He was certainly a more dominant force of the paint and worse matchup for the Hawks. He might be better center at this point than Embiid is as well. So before we go, Going to talk a little bit of Braves. Of course, they had the big news last week. Robert Suarez signing. He was in my top 3 of relievers I wanted to see the Braves sign. And with Raisel Iglesias was signed by the Braves earlier this offseason. Raisel Martinez was the other option I had in my top 3. A little bit of an unproven asset coming out of the NPB. Of course, he features a stellar fastball, a high velo fastball, and had stellar numbers in Japan's professional baseball league. But Robert Suarez, a much more known commodity for the Braves, and might be a better option. We'll see how those two play out. Of course, if Raisel Martinez joins MLB, he was projected to have quite a sizable contract. So for the Braves, the rest of this offseason, the key for them now is to get at least a big bat. It'd be nice to have a starting pitcher situation, ace quality starting pitcher situation. Of course, with the Braves, they have Chris Sale, Reynaldo Lopez, Spencer Schwellenbach, Spencer Strider. We really have no proven playoff starting pitching assets. Chris Sale, of course, he had the wonderful World Series run with the Red Sox, but outside of that, his playoff numbers are pretty terrible. Although, the same as I've said with Max Fried, who has better playoff numbers, I would be very happy to have either of them start a playoff game, both healthy, that is. So I think they're both stellar players to start playoff games. I wouldn't dig too much into playoff stats versus regular season stats being that big of a difference. A lot of these things are situational and depend on health as well. So feel good about Chris Sale. Spencer Schwellenbach, he has that big splitter. Maybe he can be like the Blue Jays star rookie Trey Savage, who came out of nowhere and really split ball the way through the playoffs. That'd be cool. But we don't know if he's going to do that for sure yet. Reynaldo Lopez, we're not sure if he's going to be the same coming back. Hopefully he is. He had that wipeout slider. Spencer Strider, he certainly has not been the same coming back for the Braves. So maybe he will be next year. But looking at this team, we have no proven playoff quality ace. At least that's been redundant and had a large body of success. We don't necessarily need that. Of course, Trey Savage, the Blue Jays, he had a great playoff run, and that's what we need from our pitchers. But as far as the Braves' situation trying to become a contender this offseason, they really want to acquire one more big bat, and hopefully at shortstop, and that would start putting them in the stratosphere of the Dodgers as far as having a lineup that can certainly mash with them and contend with them, maybe even be better at that point, depending on who they add. And starting pitching can then at that point maybe wait until the deadline. You can see what you have. Maybe name like J.R. Ritchie steps up the prospects. Didier Fuentes, I think more likely than J.R. Ritchie to step up in 2026. But we'll see. As well, all the candidates, the Braves do not have assets for Pablo Lopez trade, I do not believe, with how costly trades have been this MLB offseason. We saw a 44 ranked catcher, top 100 prospect, Major League Baseball, traded to the Nationals for relief pitcher, a 4.5. So don't think combining Cam Caminiti with Sean Murphy and whoever else is down the line, Diego Torres, Tate South and Scene, I don't think that's going to yield us a Pablo Lopez, unfortunately. And then the other pitchers left, free agent market, all have qualifying options, except for Chris Bassett. He'd be a very interesting option. I hope the Braves sign Chris Bassett. He's probably the best option left that does not have a qualifying offer. Outside of Japanese phenom Tatsuya Mai, who would be a high reward with moderate risk signing. He does not have a qualifying offer as well. So those would be two great options. Obviously, the Braves seem to be a team with limited resources, even if they state otherwise. So Chris Bassett might make more sense financially, with Tatsui Mai likely having a large contract. Other names still available: Michael King, Ranger Suarez, Zach Gallen, Dylan Cease. He signed with the Blue Jays. Shota Imanaga, he opted into his option, I believe, with he's staying with the Cubs. So options are dwindling. Too bad the Braves didn't re-sign Max Fried last offseason. That would solve this. So who's the big bat for the Braves? Don't know. Bo Bichette has been floated around in articles, although that feels more like a myth. A lot of these rumors, a lot of these off-season rumors we've been getting in feel like they've been coming. People have been making headlines out of like burner Twitter account tweets. You know, a lot of these rumors do not appear to be coming or based in any kind of reality. So Bo Bichette to Atlanta, I think very dubious. My top still available: Cody Bellinger, Pete Alonso. He signed with Orioles. Another top names: Kyle Tucker. Those would be the three top bats probably left: Bo Bichette, Kyle Tucker, Cody Bellinger. Alex Bregman might be a little bit of a cheaper option as far as well. So Alex Bregman was quoted as saying his market is softened. He wished he opted into his option worth $80 million with the Red Sox. They're thinking his market might be less than that. Might make sense for the Braves, although where would you put him? I guess Austin Riley, he's coming back from hernia surgery. Maybe you need a third baseman early on. A DH, it will always be open. And then as well, second base, looking at Ozzy Albies coming back. And hopefully he's all right and everything. Cat's meowing. All right, well, we got to wrap up things here. It's been a monstrous episode of the BOS Sports Blogcast. Next episode will be on TikTok and YouTube only. We're ending broadcast on X. No more X broadcast. So be sure to stream previous episodes of BOS Sports Blogcast. Stream Bar of Soap music on Spotify. Stream Tangible Jazz Dreams music as well. And we'll see you in about a week or so with the next episode.